Well, there we go, guys. I think the only way to describe that was winging a prayer stuff. Towards the end, that cutter was really protesting. The whole mill was shaking, and I just expected at any minute it was just going to go. It's well and truly worn out now. Is that it may be resharpenable, but obviously I don't have the gear to do that properly here, so we'll put that in the potential for future resharpening. One thing that I do have on my wish list for not any time soon but some point in the future is a tool and cutter grinder of some description, so at some point we may be able to refresh that. So if I want to make another 4 of these out of the remaining stock that I've got, I'm going to need to buy another one of those, and again it's going to be winging a prayer. It will just about do what it's done here. But all of that being said, 1.282 was the dimension I was after. I don't know whether you can see that on the vernier, but 1.2825. So despite all that protesting, it's within, with a vernier, within 5/10 of where it should be. So I'm pleased with that. The other dimension this way should be 250. $248.5. I don't know whether you can see that or not, but so we're within, we're within a thou and a half of where we should be. So I'm pleased with that. It's left a reasonable finish. I've just taken the slightest skim off the bottom, and it was just a slight skim, just to make sure that I'd got all the way down into the corner. Not really necessary, because this bottom face is in clearance anyway during operation. The only face that matters is the underside, obviously, of here, as it's pulling the cartridge back onto the Dickson tool post. So that was the bit that I was most concerned about out of the whole thing, really, in terms of capability. The next concerning thing is accuracy and position, and that's all within my gift to make right, I guess, with all the planning I've done. So the next job now is to, well, I have two choices. I can either slice this thing up into a set of 2 and a set of 2, which will then fit in the vise long ways at an angle, so I can start milling in the angle stuff at the back. What I'm thinking about doing, and it's going to take some marking out and some thought, is flipping this over and actually, taking the slots out the other side that the tools are actually going to sit in. What I'd like to do is get rid of all the meat, so if there's any residual stress in this block at all of the movement is done and dusted and out of the way before I start machining the bit that really matters, which are the 2 angled faces that actually locate on the tool post. So I'll give that a bit of thought overnight, and then I'll come back tomorrow or the next day, film a bit more, and we'll decide whether we're milling out the 4 slots in here for the tools to go in, or whether we're just going to chop it in half, machine the dovetails on the back or the angled faces on the back, then split it into single pieces, and then machine the tool slot in single pieces. I'm not decided on that yet. I'll give it some thought. So I'll bring you back when we're at that next part of the manufacturing process. Right guys, next job. Well, I've still got it up at this setting. On the originals, where the T-slot is, on the sort of entrance to the slot, so where you're actually loading these things on and off, there's about best I can measure it on the beaten up ones I've got, 60 degree or 30 degree, depends which face you're coming from, chamfer on the edges. Now the 3 that I've got various different sizes of chamfer, so I'm just going to go for a fairly smallish chamfer, which is what's on this one, and this is the best one of the bunch that I've got. So not quite sure how this is going to go. This is actually a 60 degree countersink, but it's the only thing that I've got that's at that angle without tipping the head over for the sake of putting a chamfer on. So I think as long as I go fairly steady with it, it's solid carbide, so it should be okay. And I'm just going to run a chamfer up and down each edge, and just finish that sharp edge off. power up. Let's try that. Stuff like that. We'll go for half a mil, see what that looks like. Not bad. I think we'll go for a tiny bit more. We'll do a climb cut. We'll see how it goes with the climb cut, and I think we'll speed things up a little bit. So we'll give it another 10,000, so 3/4 of a mil. I think that'll be okay. Yeah, that looks good. I'll do the other side off camera, and then the next job then is to take this block out and get set up for the next operation, or the next operations. So when I take the block out, I'll bring it up to the camera best I can and show you the T-slot and the chamfer that I've just put on. Right, so there we go then guys, that's the blocking out of the T-slot done. And the chamfer on the edges that approximates what's on the original Dickson cartridge. It's so beaten up, the chamfer on that, it's not worth measuring it and trying to replicate it. So I've just gone for a visual chamfer that looks somewhere near, and there you can see the profile of the T-slot that way. So I'm pleased with that. Fair old bit of work's gone into that, but we're correct size this way, we're correct size this way. All of the T-slots finished other than some deburring, and I'm going to leave that until they're in single blocks, because it's going to be far easier to try and file through a short distance than it is down the whole length of it. So we'll leave that. I've just got to remember not to try and pick it up from in there. So the next job is to cut this clean in half. So that's the next job on the bandsaw. So we'll halve it, and then we'll set it up the other way up on parallels, one at a time. And the first thing we're going to do is take a light skim off each end, and then I'll pitch in from that skim face to put the slot through for the actual tool to go in. I want to remove all of that material before I start doing the bit that's really important, which is the location. So I want to try and get any stress relieving done of the material from any residual stress that might be in there, and then the very last thing I'll do then is machine the proper locations for the Dickson tool post, other than the holes, the drilled and tapped holes and stuff that I need to do. So that's roughly the sequence of operations now. So I'll bring you back when we're setting up the next operation to face the ends up, mill the slots out, and then we'll do that on both of them, and I'll show you some of that. Alright guys, we've where are we? There we go. So we've chopped that total length in half now, and we're getting ready for the next operation. So I'm going to do these one at a time now. So I'll put one to one side and we'll set the other one up. So basically what we're going to do now is I'm going to sit down on this back face, make sure everything's clean. So I've sat on a couple of decent parallels. Just give that a tap up. Okay. I'm not quite sure how this is going to go, because this is going to be a really good test for the mill. So we've got a 20mm solid carbide end mill in here. It's not new, but it's it feels reasonably keen, but it's got a good long flute length on it. And basically I want a flank mill, just the lightest skim to clean up the sawn face on this end, and we'll take it out, deburr it, do the same thing this end, and they will become the finished end faces of basically two of the blocks. So we'll get on with that now, and then once that's done, so I'm going to have to do one end of this side of the vise, and then take it out, flip it round, same thing again, and then once that's done I'm going to set my edge finder up, find the edge, and then we're going to basically mill in the two slots into here that will actually hold the tool. So that's the next couple of operations, but like I say, this really is far too big for a hobby size mill, so I think this could either go really well or it'll make a right racket and it'll not go very well at all, but we'll give it a shot. So I'm going to run that, it's 20mm diameter. I'm going to go fairly conservatively with this. We'll start with 280 revs a minute, I think. Let's see how we get on with that, which I know is really too slow for carbide, but we'll just feel our way in. So let's get my glasses. We'll power up. Right, drop the head down. And I'm going to cut right up near the top of this end mill, near the top of the cutting edges. Try and keep the cut as close to the holder as I can. So I'm somewhere there. Down a tad more. What I actually do with this, and it just feels like the right thing to do, when I'm dropping the head up and down, I actually wind the head down slightly lower than I want it to be, and then I wind it back up again and then lock it off. So then I know all of the weight is in one direction and it's sat on the lead screw rather than it being sort of floating about. If you've just wound it down, yes, it's still on the lead screw, but the backlash is the wrong way. You can just feel it on the handle, and I think that would lead to some instability. So I wind it down lower than I want it, and then I wind it back up again, just a turn or a couple of turns, just till I know all the backlash is against gravity, if you want to call it that, and then I lock it off. Right, we'll give this a go and see what happens. Drop the x-axis off. See what happens. Take it nice and steady. Just try that one rev range up. It's not going to be happy, this, whatever I do, I don't think. Let's go for 540. I'll obviously have to edit the sound down slightly when I edit this video. Yeah, it's not the best. I'm just going to take a climb pass back across without changing anything and just see if it cleans up a tiny bit. That's a much better finish. We'll settle for that. Right, I'll whip this round, do the same the other end. I'll not film that because it's exactly the same. And then I'll bring you back in when we're setting up ready for putting the slots in. Alright guys, we're at the next stage now. So I've got one of the halves of the blocks loaded up in the vise, sat the other way up. So we're just going to touch off this edge. So basically these two edges I've machined, each end will become the top face of a holder, of a Dickson cartridge. The centre piece that will be bandsawn through eventually to make those two separate cartridges will be the bottom face of both. So despite the fact this is one block, there's two completely separate setups and separate items sat within that, because obviously I don't know what thickness. I can measure the thickness of the bandsaw blade, but by the time I've sawn it, accounted for any runoff, cleaned up the faces, I can't pitch across from this face to put the slot in on this side. So we'll set up from this side or this end to do this slot, and then we'll set up again from that end to do the slot on that end, so they become completely independent of each other. So we'll just touch on this edge and we'll set a 0. That's 0. That's a 6mm diameter, so we need to wind on 2.5, 5. No, we don't. Let's try 3, shall we? There we go. So that's, we're now on the edge of the block. So now I need to do some conversion from imperial to metric. So I'm just going to do that now quickly off camera, and then we'll come back. I'll set up a cutter and we'll start roughing out the material out of this side. Alright guys, we've set a cutter up in there now. It's 13mm solid carbide end mill. I'm going to run at 540 RPM, and I've written on the top of the vise how far I need to pitch over. So it's actually 11mm. There or thereabouts is the top of the block with the hole where the holes go through, so that's the thickness. So I need to pitch over 11mm plus half the cutter plus an allowance for finishing. So I'm going to pitch over 18mm, and that should get me somewhere near where I need to be.
So I'll just set a 0 on here again, because I'm on the centre line of the cutter at the minute. I need 18mm. 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10, 12.5, 15, 16, 17.5 is a full turn, and then another half a mil.
That gets me to 18, and I'm just going to double check that. So I should be 11.5mm roughly from the edge. To make sure there's no silly mistakes. Yeah, it's about 11, it's saying 11.9, but that's near enough. I need to pitch across further that way for the width of the slot anyway, so we'll start there. We'll lock the x-axis off of that. And the depth of the slot is 14.25mm, so we'll come down and touch off. 4mm depths of cut, I think. We'll speed that up. To 960. So you get the idea. I'll spare your eardrums. I'll carry on pitching down there till we get to within half, 3/4 of a millimetre of finished depth, and then I'll bring you back when we're pitching across or when I'm doing the final cuts. But I'm just going to rough all of that slot out now. This mill has some resonant frequency in it, and I've yet to pinpoint what's causing it, but every time I'm end milling, flank milling, it sets up a resonance, and most of the noise seems to come from the motor. It's not coming from the motor, but that's where most of the noise seems to be evident that it's coming from, and I think that's all down to the quality of the bearings that's in the geared head, if I'm honest. But I'll persevere with it. We'll keep tightening things up, but it's doing the job. We're removing the material, so I'll bring you back when we've blocked this first one out and we're ready to finish it off. Right guys, I've played around a bit with depths of cut, speeds, feeds, and I've sort of found a sweet spot. So it was happy at 1/2 mil depth of cut with a full slotting cut, and now I'm just taking out the extra bit to get the width, leaving a finished pass on, obviously on the side walls and on the floor. And on this, which isn't a full cut, it's kind of happy at 3/4 of a mil depth of cut. So I'll just show you some of that. see that's much happier, and it's removing it at a fair decent rate really. There's a decent feed rate going through there, so it's chewing that out quite well. So I'll bring you back when we're set up to finish the walls and the floor of this slot. Right guys, I've replaced the 13mm end mill with a 10mm solid carbide end mill, and I've taken just a light skim pass off this face and a very light skim off the bottom, and I've just had a measure up. I've got 0.3 or 12 thou to come off the wall, and I've got a full millimetre to come out of the floor. So we'll just do that now. I'm going to load 0.5 millimetre of cut as I come back through the slot off the base without taking any more off the wall, and then we'll take another pass off the wall with 0.2, and I'll go down to full depth, and then we'll take a climb milling pass coming back the other way of 0.1, and that should be that wall finished. So another 0.5 mm out the floor of the slot, and we'll wind on 0.2 off the wall, which is there. This might squeal a bit. Should be it for that side. There you go. Just get the mic and have a quick measure. Looking for 433. 33.5. That's good enough for me. We'll leave that at that. So what I need to do now is the same thing, pitch across to the other side, take a light skim cut, check the width, the overall width, and then take a final couple of passes off the wall to get it to finished size. So we'll just do that now. If you're going to make an error in measurement, always make sure it's undersized. Let's have another measure. Yeah, I'm looking for 875. I've got 875, 8755. That's it, that's that finished. Reasonable finish on there, that's the important face, because that's the face the tool's going to sit down onto, with this being the top of the block. So I need to do that another 3 times, so I'm just going to set up now, other end of the block, exactly the same, pitch in, rough it out, change the cutters over again, finish it off with a 10mm, and then I'm going to repeat all of that on the second block, so that I've got all 4 then to the same standard, and then I'll bring you back when we've done that. So there's quite a bit of milling to do there, and then I'll bring you back at the setup of the next operation, which will be drilling in the 5mm, drilling and reaming the 5mm datum transfer hole on just 2 faces. So I'll just pick 2 faces, one on this block and one on the other block, and then we'll be ready to do the important bit on the back. I'll bring you back when we're doing that bit.